Hey there, business builders. Ever wondered what the future holds for your business? Well, in this episode, we dive into the world of emerging technologies with renowned futurist Craig Rispin. He'll be sharing his insights on how these advancements can shape the future of our businesses. Well, welcome to the Business Builders Podcast. We are your hosts. I am Brenton Gowland.
And I'm Ron Tomley.
And Ron, we tried to have today's guest on a few weeks ago, but we suffered from some technical glitches.
Technology. It can be your best friend and your worst enemy.
Just like the fact that technology is in the paper almost every day of the week at the moment, isn't it?
You can't pick up a paper or any type of news feed and not see something about AI, the fact that it's going to destroy the world or it's going to make the world a utopia, something along those lines.
So there's a lot of room in between there, which is why we've got our guest here today.
Yes, we do.
So do you want to tell us about him?
Yes, Craig Rispin is one of the world's leading futurists. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you very much, Ron and Brenton. It's great to be here. Let's talk about the future. It isn't so scary.
Let me tell our listeners a little bit more about you first. You're a recognized expert in emerging business, people, and technology trends, and most importantly, how companies can profit from those trends. Your keynote and strategic planning are powered by artificial intelligence, and I've seen it with over 1 million data sources that you're using, revealing the future of any industry or major topic. Craig has over 35 years' experience working where the future is being created with some of the most innovative organizations in the world. We'll get you to talk about some of those.
Yeah.
An awarding keynote speaker and CEO mentor, he shows his clients how to know first, be first, and profit first. And I'm a great fan of Craig's because I use him in my tech groups and they just love him.
And I have seen him present and I was super impressed. Yeah. So it's amazing to have you with us, Craig.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't wait to talk to you about the future because, well, it's my passion and I'm lucky that I have this job as a futurist.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing. You call yourself a futurist. What is a futurist and why should business leaders be interested in what they have to say?
Well, futurists are great people, not just me. There's 21,000 of us in one peer group that I'm part of. And we just ask great questions about the future to create preferable futures. And I think that's the main thing that we do. And about a third of us come from the academia and research area. About a third come from government and NGO. And like the Australian Bureau of Statistics employ a lot of futurists. And then the commercial world, and that's where I come from. And here in Australia, we've graduated about 900 students with degrees in strategic foresight, mainly from Swinburne University.
Wow. And you know, to my way of thinking, most people don't even know that something like a degree in future insight even exists.
Yes, I know. They don't think it's a real job, but I say it's a real job. There's lots of us out there. We have professional industry groups, but here's the thing. One of the exciting things about being in this community of futurists is that everything that you see around you, everything that's been built, the most successful movies in the world, and the technology that we're using today were all invented by futurists and then created by great engineers who thought, that's a great idea. I think I'll take that flip communicator from Star Trek and turn it into a phone at Motorola. Literally, that happens.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I remember when I was a young man, actually a young boy, I saw my first episode of Star Trek back in Detroit. And I thought, how cool is that communicator? And then when mobile phones came out, I thought, that's amazing. I've seen this before. The only thing I thought was cooler than the communicator was the phaser. And we haven't got those yet, and I'm kind of happy about that.
Oh, well, the military does, but that's a whole nother story.
The military have phasers?
Well, they have lasers and lasers to knock out missiles now.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's a thing. Boy, you digress.
No, that's okay. I'm still waiting for the transporter because I know we have the advantage of having talked to you once before, and you got me really jealous when we spoke because you said you knew Gene Roddenberry.
Yes, Gene Roddenberry was one of the original members of the World Future Society. The World Future Society was started in 1966, the year I was born. I didn't become a member until I was one of the first student members at the age of 11 in 1977. And the Roddenberrys are still involved with the World Future Society. His son, Eugene Roddenberry, is still on our board. And there's a lot of futurist science fiction writers that would come along to our annual meetings. They would get great ideas and they turn it into science fiction. So you can imagine when I get around the traps and I bump into some of these people. And I remember this memorable experience of going to speak to the worldwide presidents of one of the biggest advertising firms, BBDO. People know this name. And so we're in Bermuda and they have these little minivans that take you from the airport out to the resorts. And I jump into this minivan and there's a guy in a white leisure suit. And he says, "Hi there. My name is Ray Bradbury." And I'm like, "What? Ray Bradbury? I know who you are."
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, yes. And I get to bump into my idols all the time.
Yeah, you had me really jealous last time because it's just, I think we mentioned the fact that, like you just said there, that Star Trek, for example, presents a future where we've beaten all of our problems. Like we talk just about the AI destroying us or creating a utopia. Well, in the Star Trek future, it's become a utopia where people can work on art or they can work on extending the human race and so forth. And that's great. It gives you hope. So on that, in your opinion, what are the most exciting emerging technologies or trends that will significantly impact our lives over the next decade? And are they from Star Trek?
Well, some of them are, because science fiction actually was created mainly to ask big questions about what the future could be and what preferable future we would want. That's why so many of them are dystopian, is because that's not the future that we want. So we better discuss it. So that's the main purpose of science fiction, I've been told by people who've written these books and made the most famous films that everybody goes to see. So the most exciting technologies to me are based on the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution is in three areas, not just technology or the digital area. The digital area is so important because that's the existing third industrial revolution, computers and technology, expanded into new areas. And then we've got the physical world where we have things like advanced robots. And then we have the biological world where we have synthetic biology and printing of new life forms for doing all sorts of things like data storage. But that's a whole nother story.
Printing of new life forms.
Oh, yes. Yes, we can print new life forms. My daughter did this when she was at university. She's 26 now. When she was 19, she ordered a new life form, a nanoparticle that would enclose in a little trap a cancer delivery drug for treating cancer.
Wow.
And she did that when she was 19. What kind of printers did you have when you guys went to school?
Dot matrix. Do you remember them?
Yeah, I remember the dot matrix. And sometimes when I ask this question in my sessions, you know what they do in my audience? They do this round thing with their hand, round and round and round and round.
Yeah.
Like one of those printers that they actually did those copies by hand.
Well, I was pretty impressed because I just had a friend of mine print me all these computer stands. They're great. Everyone loves them. But printing actual life forms, that's next level. Will there ever be a day we'll be doing that kind of thing in our own homes?
Probably, because they are working on USB-powered life form scanners. In other words, we can sequence DNA. So this is already happening in various African continent nations. And I know that a lot of my medical device manufacturers that I work with, they're saying that the next major revolution in medical technology won't come from the developed world. It'll come from the developing world. And that's what I'm seeing.
Interesting.
Where we've got this USB powered sequencer. So it could sequence DNA or it could sequence something like COVID, for instance. And that's starting to happen already.
Wow. So are there any other technologies in that space? So we've covered off on printing and some other bits and pieces. Was there anything else on your mind before we move on to the next question?
Oh, there's all sorts. But when I talk about the third industrial revolution morphing into the fourth industrial revolution, it's really to understand these three areas.
Right.
So that it's not just about technology, computers, and communication. It's this digital world. of AR and VR, so augmented reality, which Apple is doing, and
Yes.
VR that Meta is doing, and so on. And then you've got big data and cloud technologies. And then we've got the biological world and that physical world. And what people have to understand, it's the merging of these together
Yes.
that's creating this explosion of opportunities, especially for entrepreneurs in business to be able to leverage and amplify their success. And if you understand that, new possibilities just unfold in front of you. And you're like, oh, holy cow, we need to move into this new area.
Look, just on that too, because this has just come out recently and we're talking about Apple Vision, the new interface that people have with technology, right, through the goggles that everyone's paying out and so forth, which, mind you, look very much like, I think it was Steven Spielberg's movie Ready Player One, where they were all wearing exactly the same goggles, and that was supposed to be 20 years in the future. But the reason I bring that up, it's caused a lot of discussion. Where do you see that going, and what do you see that doing with people? Because it's obviously not available till February next year, I think, in the States, and then a little bit later in Australia.
Well, you can really see that this is the really expensive product that they really want to get into the hands of just a few developers,
right,
to develop the apps that we don't even know will emerge.
Yeah.
Because that's what really happens. You know, the first iPhone was horribly expensive. Wait a second. They're even more expensive now. But anyway, they were horribly expensive and only a few people got them. And then all of a sudden, these apps came out. And Steve Jobs was against that at first, but they opened it up and listened to the people inside his company. And all of a sudden, these apps came out like Uber and Airbnb and changed all of our lives. And so that's what they're going to be doing. So it's a first very expensive device, but that's not what Apple wants to do. They want a much smaller and more efficient, so it can run more than 2 hours. And this is just the first version. And I have to say, I love Apple. I worked for Apple.
Oh, yeah.
But this is what I learned at Apple. Never buy the first version of any of Apple's things.
Interesting.
Good advice. Good advice. Now, you talked about apps like Uber, which completely disrupted an industry, the taxi industry. You talked about Airbnb that disrupted the hotel industry. Are there any specific industries or sectors that you believe will undergo significant transformations in the coming years, and how should they adapt to stay competitive? Or will they adapt?
Well, to adapt, you really have to first understand this framework of these possibilities of these three areas that can amplify from the fourth industrial revolution, then ask, how can I take advantage of this? And I'll give you an example. So I think one of the most exciting areas is the field of medicine and medical devices and so on. And I was presenting to a CEO group, and there was a female CEO in the area. And the reason I mention this is that she's quite passionate about helping actually return service people with PTSD using virtual technology, and especially returning female veterans.
Right.
So this is her practice specialty. She said, Craig, I'm really struggling to get traction because what I do is I use this VR technology to desensitize. This is actually a technique that is used clinically to desensitize my returning veterans to the trauma that they've had. But my reaction in my peak industry group is, oh, that's just a toy. Now you're just playing games. That couldn't possibly help. So, Craig, I'm looking at those three circles of the digital, the biological, and the physical world. And I'm thinking, how can I integrate the biological? Because I'm working with biological systems, people. And I said, well, didn't you know? Can't you see up there? There's neurotechnology, brain technology that's available, where you could actually look inside the brains of your patients and see how they're responding to the treatment. You could analyze their brains ahead of time. You could analyze their brains during treatment and then after treatment and actually show this, visualize this with big data. Craig, I had no idea this was, well, I kind of knew it was possible, but these machines cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, don't they? And I go, no. Thanks to emerging technology, these devices now cost less than $300.
That's right. I actually have a friend who bought one on your recommendation.
Yes. The one that I'm using that I'm quite excited about is called Mendi, Mendi, and it actually uses lasers, but not in a way that is going to shoot out other missiles out of the sky that are attacking you, but actually uses infrared lasers to go penetrate your skin and through your forehead. It can actually sense the blood flow and what's happening with your neurons. Actually, you can do that with light. Most people didn't think you can do that, but there were machines that were very expensive in hospitals. And this entrepreneur figured out that he could take that technology, shrink it down, and turn it into a consumer device. And it's just amazing technology. People think, oh, that couldn't possibly be true, but it is. Actually, the most ridiculous technology is the one that you think that couldn't possibly be true, but it is. It's like magic, as Arthur C. Clarke said.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you, Craig, is that there's no specific industries that will undergo significant transformation. It's all
it's the
industries.
it's the entire economy.
Yeah.
So every industry.
So the trick, I suppose, is that the Kodak moments of the past, where we don't want to be the type of organization that it becomes a victim of changing technologies. How can organizations that don't want to become victims, how can they adapt to stay competitive?
Okay, this is from my experience in working with the people that you work with too. It's these leaders, and they realize all of a sudden, look, this AI thing, like the iPhone moment, is going to change everything. And they ask themselves, how can I respond? And the best way to respond actually is to work with the next generation of leaders. So what I like to do is say that once you understand you got this framework and you got a strategy and you're going to make a bet on the future, please, leader, when I ask who's in charge of this project, let's say rolling out AI across your entire organization in some way, please don't point to yourself and say, this is my project. This is an ideal project for somebody else, the next generation, to take on. All they need is your permission, a little bit of resources, and maybe a framework to point them in the right direction. And please let them do it. And I like to call these people the change leaders, not the CEO, the change leaders within the organization. Sometimes peak industry groups will have a program, they'll call it their Future Leaders Program.
Yes.
And I work with them and roll out this framework of, it's a curriculum over 12 months. So they've got all the tools and resources that they need to make this change. And then who's actually going to do it? Well, when I talk to these leaders and ask them how busy their team is, they're all overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed. What are you going to do? Give them another project? That doesn't make sense. So you get this internal leader to lead, say, they become your AI wrangler for this project. But the people who actually do it are what I call reverse mentors.
Yes.
So they're young people that you get in, mostly from universities, that must do commercial projects to graduate. And you can team up with any university anywhere, and you can post a project on their internal board and say, send me 3 students who are going to research the applications of AI into the legal industry, let's say.
That's really interesting because, in a sense, unis are in danger of becoming less relevant. So that's a really good way to get unis back in the front line, I reckon.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I've worked with, all the vice chancellors, spoke to their combined group, and they've all realized that they need to have better connections to industry. And they're not very good at that. They'll admit that. And when I ask leaders, business leaders, do you have strong ties to universities? They say, no, we're not very good at that. And I say, well, let's get your change leader to be very good at that. And the only time it will take them is they pick up the phone, they call the chair of the computer science department or whatever university it might be and say, would you like me to donate a speech? I would love to give you a day off and talk to your students about the future of technology in law firms or in medical devices or whatever industry, the built environment, whatever industry you're in. you take the day off and I'll donate a speech and you can mark papers, whatever you want.
Mm.
What do you think that professor says to that?
Mm.
What? You going to give me the day off?
I know. I interface with a lot of lecturers, and I know that they'll be jumping at the chance.
Yes. And then what do they say? Well, how can I return the favor? And I say, well, we're posting projects, research projects on the applications of AI in the built environment. And if you could encourage your students, Craig, one said to me, no, I'm going to tell them they have to sign up for your project or I'm going to be very disappointed with them. Mm-hmm. And I said, great. And can we do that every semester? You send over 2 or 3 more of your superstar students, the ones that you hand select that are going to be amazing when they graduate. Oh, Craig, we'd love to partner with you on that. And so I have to tell you, many of my CEOs over the last 25 years have turned this into, at one point, the Macquarie Bank had 800 reverse mentors coming on campus every single week, working with their most senior leaders, because you know what they admitted to me? I don't know if they would like me saying this, but this is a long time ago now.
What do you call it? Chatham House rules here. There's only 1,000 people listening.
I'll tell you, and I think they will own up to this anyway, and because their CEO has said it publicly. At one point, they weren't being invited in those billion-dollar room deals anymore. Their rainmakers had sort of aged out of being, because their industries that they knew about had shifted. And to really be in those discussions of those next billion-dollar deals, they weren't having those discussions. And they told me that they got $1 billion worth of deal with Elon to fund him in his next deal. And they told me a direct line, Craig, we can draw a direct line between your recommendation of us getting reverse mentors and us getting that deal with Elon. So thank you, Craig, for that $1 billion opportunity. And I said to them, can I get it in writing? They said, no, we have a policy. We don't recommend vendors.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no.
How government
of them. It's true. It's absolutely true.
It's not only industries that are facing challenges. Globally, we're facing all sorts of challenges. Climate change, resource scarcity. Futurists would seem to me to have a role to play in that. What's your view on that?
Well, we do, in fact. The Futurist community actually started this global conversation about the limits to growth back in 1972 when a book came out called The Limits to Growth.
Right.
And it was, get this, the very first book based on research of modeling of the finite resources and population that we have on this planet and that we were going to have in the future. And it was done on punch cards like they did in the 1970s. And it was so accurate that for the 40th anniversary, CSIRO ran the same algorithm. And they said it was about 89% accurate, the forecasts of the population growths and the limits to growth. And if you look at that and Google that, go to Wikipedia and see it, it's got this map. And the dwindling resources that you're talking about, Ron, are specifically mapped in that and population growth. And so we have actually been having these global conversations since the 1970s, and the sustainability industry worldwide started with our community, who at the time, I can tell you in 1972, I remember it as a kid, my parents were trying to share this book with some of their friends and family. And you know what they were called when you suggested there was a limits to growth?
What?
They were called communists.
Oh.
They were literally called communists because you suggested that there was a limit to oil or a limit to iron or a limit to natural resources based on population growth. But I think the conversation has definitely moved on from there.
Well, every generation has its thing.
It does. And I have to tell you, there are a great number of futurists who are trying to encourage the next generation of leaders to not just have a project where they're working on a project at a company, but how about a project that has a positive impact in the world that would help at least 1 billion people. And
Wow.
I've been part of those programs, getting young people to think, how can I serve 1 billion people? And I'm getting goosebumps right now because this is the kind of thing that we need everyone, especially our next generation of leaders, to be talking about every day.
Yeah, it's interesting. Helping 1 billion people can seem like a really scary, almost impossible task. But does technology, because I think we had a conversation a while back and you said it used to be that a country did a thing, but now a business can do what a country did. And then you said now it's an individual who can do what a business did based on AI and so forth. So how do you get people to think that they can actually affect people at that scale? Is it through technology? Is it through just creating a different way of thinking?
It is. First, you have to have that idea that maybe this, in fact, is possible. That something that I never thought was possible could be true. So first, you have to have that, entertain that idea in your head that there is actually this abundance, that there isn't a limit actually when it comes to thought. So ideas, big ideas, there's no natural resource is dwindling in that space. And so really it is a mindset. And then Peter Diamandis, who's a famous futurist who started the X Prize, and Salam Ismail, who wrote this fantastic book together, Exponential Organizations. They've just come out with a second version, Exponential Organizations 2.0.
Yeah.
And they said something really interesting in a recent interview, that they said that the next billionaires are going to be 3 people and AI, and that's it.
As in the whole company is 3 people.
The whole company. Yes.
Because billion is a big number. Millionaires, absolutely, I get that. I'm not challenging you on that. I'm just saying, wow.
And you can see that this is possible. And especially what's the challenge right now, and the reason, I'll give you the reason that Microsoft invested $11 billion in a startup called OpenAI. And even though they had employed, it was estimated 30,000 AI experts, this team of a few hundred AI experts at OpenAI gazumped Microsoft, gazumped Amazon, gazumped Apple. And they're all looking at that now saying, there is no moat. This is what one leaked memo that came out from Google. There is no moat with AI, that anybody can use this and they can be as good as us. Even if we were to invest $1 trillion, it wouldn't be a moat.
Wow.
So this is for anyone. And if you have this mindset of, how could I do something to benefit 1 billion people? And how could I use AI to help 1 billion returning veterans? And we're probably going to have that. So why not have this tool that can help 1 billion people?
Yeah.
And reduce the cost to the ridiculous of a few $100s so you can see into somebody's brain, and it's not delegated to expensive consultations at hospitals on expensive equipment.
Well, as we all know, that's getting really hard to even get a booking at a hospital or getting a booking with a medical professional at the moment. So that just makes it accessible to people all of a sudden.
Yes. And I can tell you that the smartest doctors in the world right now are recommending apps and consumer grade technology that has been brought down from, hospital based technology. And they're saying you can go off your tablets, use this app and use this device, and you don't have to be on tablets. Now, somebody out there is going to go, oh, Craig, no, wait a minute. Are you an anti-tablet person? And I'm like, no, but I can tell you the smartest cardiologist in the world in New York City, I won't say who he is because I don't want to get him in trouble, but he is considered the number one cardiologist in the world. And he says to patients, you have 2 paths forward. You can wear an Apple Watch and run this app and check your heart rate and eat this meal plan and do this exercise, or you can be on this collection of 12 tablets for the rest of your life.
Hello,
Pick
Apple Watch.
Yeah. The Apple Watch, where it checks your pulse every 6 seconds.
Yep. I had someone who was working with us who had an Apple Watch to manage a heart condition they had. So what you're saying is ringing true.
So it has the potential to affect us in every aspect of our lives. And that brings us this artificial intelligence that we started our discussion today talking about the fact that it seems to be in very short order, although I know it hasn't been a short order, but it seems to a lot of people that it's the last 6 months, it just exploded and continues to advance, and it's starting to become all pervasive. What are your thoughts on the potential benefits and risks associated with this widespread, or seem to be widespread, adoption of AI?
Well, I can tell you that this is just a repeating pattern for me. So it's the 10 to 100 times productivity boost that we saw with the PC. Then we had the internal network and the worldwide network. So the LAN and then the internet. And then next we had the mobile phone. And then we connected the mobile phone with an app store to the cloud. And we had mobile and cloud. And each time we had this boost in productivity of 10x to 100x. And we're about to have that now. And imagine it's just like the App Store again. It's 2009 again, and two companies start up called Airbnb and Uber based on a new technology called the App Store. And they completely transform industries worldwide. Well, it's like that again. And in just the last 4 months, more has happened in AI with, I'm tracking now 12,000 AI apps have come out in the last 4 months. And that maps almost exactly to the number of apps that came out in the first 4 months when the App Store came out. And then a year later, there were 1 million apps, as you might recall. Well, I can tell you there's going to be 1 million AI apps within 12 months, most certainly. There are going to be 1 billion people using it every single day, because it's not only going to be built into every one of our phones, it's going to be built into Microsoft Office or Google Apps, and people are going to be using it every day. And I can tell you right now, there will be two types of firms in the future. Firms who exploit the opportunity of AI and the ones that are out of business. I can see this. I saw it when the App Store came out. There were a few CEOs that approached me and said, Craig, this is going to change the hotel industry. Craig, this is going to change the taxi industry. Craig, this is going to change the publishing industry. Craig, this is going to change the legal industry. And they took action. And I can tell you, all those leaders who did not are no longer around.
Really?
I can show that to you.
So that's one of the risks. You pretend it's not there at your own risk. But there's a lot of talk about AI going out of control and AI taking over the world. Give us your perspective on that from a futurist point of view.
Are we talking Terminator here? Well, Skynet?
Yeah, I wasn't going to go down that path, but yeah, that's the type of stuff that people are talking about. And even some of the people involved in AI seem to be giving it some credence. So the reason I asked that question is, we've got someone on the show who actually lives in this area. What's your perspective, Craig?
Well, I looked at all their arguments because I'm open to new ideas. And I really, really want to consider whether their arguments could be true. So I've listened, and I haven't heard an argument that I can really get on board with that AI is going to wipe us out. Because I saw this guy that started this whole movement writing this letter, and he had 500 leaders saying we should pump the brakes a little bit on this AI thing. And he was on the BBC. And the argument he was making is that if we allow AI to accelerate at this alarming rate, it could be used to design, let's say, a superbug, a printed life form, let's say, right? That I talked about. And it could wipe us all off the face of the planet. And people in my family and people that know me, I've been talking about this for 30 years. We could do that today. We don't need AI. How is AI going to make that any easier? Will it make it easier to design drugs? Probably. Yes. Will it make it easier to design evil viruses? Yes. But that is already happening, and it's not because of AI. And so I just haven't heard an argument that really stands up. And it's interesting that many of the people who signed that letter saying we need to hit pause on AI, with the firms already doing it. Sam Altman, the co-founder of OpenAI, went to Congress and said, they said, don't you think you need to be regulated? And you know what he said? Yes, I think you should regulate us. And I have to tell you, there's this universal law of technology.
Mm.
And the universal law states this: technology always precedes legislation. And I've just been working with the taxi industry again, and I can tell you exactly how many years it took the government to respond to Uber in Australia. How many years do you think that was?
Oh, 3 to 5?
It was 5 years.
Oh, got close.
5
That's a long
years.
time.
A very long time.
And I remember the taxi drivers screaming about it for years.
Yes.
And we were all celebrating in the background going, but we're getting better service.
Yeah, that's right. And I just don't think there is really that threat. And from my sense, I've heard this repeated time and time again. I've heard the PC was going to be used for evil purposes and the internet was going to be used for evil purposes. And it has. But you know that there's been this study of bad actors on these platforms like Facebook Marketplace and eBay and Etsy and other things. And if in these marketplaces, if they were mostly bad actors in these marketplaces, then they wouldn't be used. And so what's the factor of good intentioned people happy to do business with one another versus the bad actors? And the universal number is somewhere between 8 to 10,000 to 1. So 8 to 10,000 good actors for every bad actor.
Interesting.
This is the internet, right? And everybody said, well, it's going to end us. And it has ended, newspapers to some extent, in some ways, and other industries. But this is what happens. Nobody can stop this. All we can do is adapt, be ready for it, and embrace it. And if your leaders are listening, please do not take this on as a personal project. All you need to do is know enough to ask. We must roll out AI across our organization to delight our customers and make our staff's life easier. Why wouldn't we do this when the cost is 1/100th of what it was 10 years ago?
Yep, 100%. Now, that's all really incredible stuff. I'm really liking this, and we're coming up to almost needing to be at time. And I think Ron will probably agree. I think we should have you back on the show because I think there's a lot more things to talk about here. But the Business Builders podcast, it's all about giving practical advice to business leaders right now. And I know that that's what's been happening. Like I've been listening to the reverse mentoring thing, and I think that's absolutely fantastic because bringing in that younger generation and really learning from them is great for our present, more senior leaders. But it'd be great to wrap up our discussion today with what you would recommend are the top 3 things that we as business owners, business leaders can do right now to prepare ourselves to stay competitive moving into the future.
Sure. So right now it's about deploying AI because everybody's going to have it. And if you don't, you're going to be left behind. So get that wrangler, if we call them that, in place, but don't take an ad hoc approach. When I get done with speaking to the CEOs, many times I get invited to their place and I talk to their staff, and when the leader isn't around, and I say, what's the biggest problem with making change, deploying things? And they said, the leader comes back from your sessions, Craig, and said, Craig says about this fantastic video editing tool called Descript, and you should do that. And then he goes back to his office, and we don't know. Is this important? Is this strategic? Is this urgent? Well, what project is this for? So we need to have models to deploy things with not an ad hoc approach. And we can start with a model that everybody understands. So there's the next step. Take your org chart and look at all the tasks that everybody on your org chart needs to do. And each person, ask them, what are the tasks you hate doing? And let's find an AI for that. And let's find an AI app that makes you look like a superhero to your client or customer.
Yeah.
Well, that might be an internal client or customer, by the way. or an external client or customer. So an org chart to begin with, and then the next level that many people in the advertising industry and some that have worked with agencies understand what a buyer's journey is, where you map out every touch point that customers have with you. And so we've talked about internal tasks. Now this is external. How can you use AI to engage with your customers that's 10 times better? And could I give you one example of that?
Please, you're speaking my language right now.
Great. And so here's a perfect example. Almost every time I ask a customer, what's one of the main ways that people engage with you very first time they touch your organization, and they'll say, well, they'll send in a form from our website or send an email into us inquiring about our services. And I said, and how do you reply? And what do they say? 99.9% of the time, we reply with an email. I go, so how can we make that 10 to 100 times better? So I would suggest there's a tool that you could use at scale to send videos back using kind of deep fake technology, where you record your voice as the sales leader or the CEO, and you record one message and it says, hi, Ron, or hi, Brenton, or hi, Craig. Thank you so much for your inquiry. I see you're in South Australia. We've worked with many firms in South Australia. Over my shoulder here, you'll see 3 of our most recent jobs that we've done in South Australia. Now, you record that video once, and using deepfake technology, it will change your lip movements, and it can say, hey, Craig, hey, Ron, hey, Brenton, and can insert the media dynamically over the shoulder based on where their inquiry was from. And let me ask you, what do you think? Is that 10 or 100 times better?
Well, I think it's definitely higher than 10. Is it 100 times better? Well, maybe. But certainly my argument to people is if you can see someone's eyes and you can see how they talk and their expressions, you're way ahead of the game, because I call it the no, like, trust continuum. So you've gone from no to like rather than just,
Yes. And if you actually go to one of these apps, and I'm saying one of these apps because there are literally dozens of them, but one I'm going to recommend that is low cost, under $20 a month, that can do this. And if you look at their actual results of what their clients are getting, how about their return on investment is in excess of 500%.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Can you tell us the app?
Oh, yeah. The app is called B, Human, but it's the letter B and human. So it's the letter B, human.
Yeah. And
I've used this with clients in legal, finance, agriculture, consulting, medical, every area you could imagine. And that's just one touch point. Imagine if you did that at every touch point, Brenton.
Yeah.
Where you were at least 10 times better.
And I'm sure there are plenty of places that people can go to find this stuff, but someone pointed me in the direction of a website called Futurepedia the other day, where all these AI apps are being cataloged.
Yeah.
And you can go and you can look for different things. So I'm just telling people, have a look at that. If you want to find out what's available, what sort of AI apps are out there that you could use, have a look at Futurepedia. It's fantastic.
It is. It is a great one. And there's a couple others that I would recommend.
That's why I say I'm sure there are others.
Yes. Internal tasks, I like to use. There's an AI for that, because at the top of their website, they've identified over 1,300 different tasks that AI can take over. And then if you're looking for categories, I like to use Future Tools, futuretools.ai, and Futurepedia. I subscribe to all of these and I get all of their newsletters.
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
I'm aware. And there are actually dozens of aggregators like Futurepedia and Future Tools. And there's an AI for that. But here's the interesting thing. Many of them are using technology to grab all the new apps since the day they've started. Well, they started several months ago. I started 30 years ago.
Yes.
And the list was very small. So many of them are saying there are 4,000 or 5,000. I can tell you today there's more than 12,000, and there'll be more than 1 million by the end of the year.
Incredible.
Yeah, look, I'm right now, my current practice is when I got a task to do is to go looking for an app to help, and I've done it in a number of cases. And I think, again, you're really speaking my language. I've been trying with my clients to get them onto AI, and there's a slow uptake. I've been reverse mentoring Ron because we're using Descript to edit this podcast, Craig.
Yes.
And
Yes.
for yonks, I couldn't get Ron to help me because I've done sound engineering in the past, and so it comes second nature to me. But then I saw Descript and I thought I can cut my work in half because I can get Ron to do it.
And even I can use it.
So that's been fun. So there's a bit of reverse mentoring considering he's my mentor. But are there any other things? Sorry. I really enjoy the fact that Ron can do this now.
Yeah, I bet you do.
But are there any other areas, Craig? So you've talked about the leading of change, getting people involved, trying apps. Are there any other last pieces of advice you'd give to people about staying competitive moving into the future?
Yes. And so what I would say is don't overload your team, even though you must have many, many different apps to help for very, very different tasks. It's important that people have time to learn and create new neural pathways in our brains. I learned about this. So what I say is don't break the stream, roll out one app for the entire team, check back weekly and ask the question, how have you been successful with this? Tell us what you've done, share successes, and do it where you've got people using it every single day for 30 days. And at the end of it, you can say you can continue to use it if you want. If not, unsubscribe and we'll save the money. And then you'll have another app of the month the following.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good.
Yes. And we've learned that if you do something consistently for more than 28 days, you will create the neural pathways in your brain and it will become a way that we do things around here.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes. And what I say to companies, Brenton, let's do this. Let's roll out an app a month. And even if we have a 50% failure rate, by the end of the year, how different would your organization be?
I think the spike is right at the beginning. So I remember when I started, there's a whole heap of AIs that are really easy, but something like Descript takes a little bit of learning, right? So the first couple of weeks with that, I was pulling my hair out. 4 weeks on, I'm like, this is a breeze. And because I got my head around how it works, all of that kind of stuff. So I think, and I'm a pretty tech savvy kind of person. So when I go into businesses like manufacturing businesses and retailers and different ones, that little hump at the start of trying something new, that's the bit you got to get over.
I'll tell you one app that I've seen that is going to transform the filmmaking industry.
Ooh.
It would have come into, you've seen it on some of these websites like Futurepedia, but it's early days. It's about to be released and it's for making, say, science fiction films. And it's called Wonder Studio. And what it does is you can film actors outside or inside or sitting behind a camera, in a podcasting studio. And then you can drop a robot, a 3D model over the top of that actor. It will take the actor out, put the robot in place, and animate the face to be identical to the actor. And this, I used to train young people to do this digital composing and animation.
Yeah.
And they do it for a living. And they would work on films like, for instance, Lord of the Rings for 14 months. And now you can do what they were doing for 14 months. You can do in minutes. Literally in minutes. And guess who is one of the first investors in this company?
Disney?
Steven Spielberg.
Oh, really?
himself.
Sorry. I read an article today on Disney and they've released Secret Invasion and the whole intro with his name.
It was text to video. Yes.
Yeah.
If you see that intro on Secret Invasion, and you might go, oh, well, I can kind of see that was generative a video. Well, they wanted you to see that it was like that. Yeah. So don't bag it. If you're like, oh, that isn't full res.
There's a full article in, I think it's either the Australian or the Advertiser or something today about basically actors are on notice because they copied Samuel L. Jackson. And so as you said, for the intro, it was all generated by AI.
Oh, well, there's a whole agency in Hollywood right now that is going to all these older actors and saying, we can license your digital version of you.
Wow.
And so you don't even have to turn up, but you can still get paid.
Oh.
And for those actors who are at retirement age, this could be a whole new revenue stream for them.
I heard Brad Pitt talking the other day about the fact he doesn't like night shoots anymore. So he could just be like, well, night shoot can be AI.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
And I have to tell you, just think about this. I feel like I have to grab the shoulders of CEOs and shake them awake and say, wake up. The world has changed and you're just keeping on doing what you did last quarter or last year or 3 years ago or 10 years ago. You can't do that and think you could be competitive.
My biggest fear for my clients and for the businesses that I'm meeting is that they just keep doing business as usual. And I don't think you can do that anymore. You have to keep an eye on the horizon.
I think for a lot of people, there's a temptation to put their head in the sand and just, if I work really hard, I can stay in the game. And I don't think that's possible anymore.
Correct.
Think about it. What organization doesn't use a computer? 30 years ago, it was kind of at the leading edge. Now you've got it. You can have an entire organization, one person like me, and all you need is a computer.
Well, what organization doesn't use a phone? And phones are connecting businesses much more than computers now.
Yep. It's so true. If you study to be a car mechanic now, what's the first course you take? It's Internet of Things monitoring. It's all the sensors and computers in every car. And I'm not just talking about Tesla. It's Toyota and BMW and Mercedes. It's every car. And what happens when you take it to the service center now? They literally plug into the USB and the car tells them what you should fix.
Yep. It's an interesting world.
And I'm really keen to get Craig back on.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Now, before we go, there's a bit of a plug. Craig, you're in Adelaide next week. Do you want to tell us about that? Because it's an opportunity for people to come and see you.
Yes, that's right. So I'm doing an event that is a charity event to raise funds for a great cause. And it's on the 11th of July. And I'm really looking forward to it because it's going to be one of these sessions where I just don't talk about AI, but we're going to do hands-on as well.
I heard that you got to attend, you have to bring a laptop.
That's right, a laptop or a mobile device.
And if I'm not incorrect, it's to help Operation Flinders.
That's right, Operation Flinders, which is a great program for helping kids at risk and others have a bigger worldview. It's roughly based on an outward bound model that I've been a huge advocate for worldwide. And there's an added mentality that goes around with it, if you're not aware, that moves people from dwelling on the past or trying to get immediate results or pleasure, we say, and focus on the future. And just doing that significantly improves their mental health.
Yeah.
So thinking like a futurist, in fact, improves your mental health. And it's used with many, many, many programs like Operation Flinders all around the world to help youth at risk.
Okay, so look on Ron Tomlin or Brenton Gowland's LinkedIn feed, and we'll have an advertisement for that in the next week.
Yep, and on mine too.
And on that, what's the best way for people to contact you, Craig?
Well, the best place is LinkedIn, really, because if you go to LinkedIn, then you can see all the people that I've already worked with in your industry. And you can call them up and go, did you really hire Craig Rispin? And what was your return on investment? And when they say $1 billion, that usually does the trick. So
I'm impressed with how many people Craig knows, though, actually. I said to Craig the other day that we had Bill Caskey on the show from the United States, and Craig's like, oh, Bill. I'm like, you don't know Bill Caskey. He's like, sure I do. He's in one of my networks. And I'm like, wow, it's only got 47,000 people in that network.
Yes. Well, you know what futurists do? We were told in our training program is great futurists have many networks that are loosely connected to one another of influence. And so this is one of the things we were trained to do is be part of a lot of different peer groups to learn and use them as brain trusts. And so I'm happy to say I work with about 25 different networks per year. And I just love it because not only do I get the chance to serve others and shift their mindset into the future, but I learn so much from my customers. Really what we do as futurists is tell people what is transforming other industries, and we cross-fertilize like bumblebees. This is what we're told, to be like bumblebees and cross-fertilize between industries. Because as you probably know, some industries are ahead of others, and we can learn from them.
I could not agree with you more. And that's the whole concept of business builders, that we get together, we share things with each other that can help each other grow. And so we are very glad, Craig, that you're part of our network. And we just want to thank you for joining us today.
Well, you're very welcome. And I can't wait to continue the conversation sometime in the near future.
Agreed. And thank you for joining us, everyone who's been listening. On the next episode, we're going to have a gentleman come along and speak about implementing a 4-day work week in his business. We had him speak the other night at SA Business Builders, and that was a really interesting conversation. So we're going to bring it to you in our next episode. So that's 2 weeks' time. So that's bye from me.
Bye from me.
And see you later, Craig.
See you.